These days, people idolize FAANG Devs, but the truth is, the hardest part of the job is the interview. But if they're so brilliant, why just a couple of weeks ago did AWS turn off the internet for a week? In my humble opinion, they're not as amazing as they seem. But to understand this, let's look a little deeper. For those who don't know, FAANG stands for Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. Companies that are known for creating amazing devs and also the prime time. Over the last 2 decades, the tech industry has created a godlike mythology around FAANG. We've been sold the narrative that if you get hired by one of these companies, you are basically Ilya himself. However, when you look at the evidence, this does not seem to be the case. Firstly, we need to understand when the mythos of a FAANG engineer actually came about. Like most stuff in tech, it began with the dot-com boom. Huge companies at the time like Pets.com and others gained billions of dollars in investment, and soon ended up IPOing. However, again, as I'm sure we all know, this did not last long, and the bubble popped. Once the bubble exploded, everyone in tech pretty much shit the bed. Everything crashed and burned. However, once all the smoke had dissipated, there were a few people standing, and what emerged from this was the exact type of mentality that would stick around tech for the next decades. And this was exceptionalism. Okay, that might seem a little bit vague, but let me explain. Since all the companies had died, the people who had managed to survive, normally via luck, were put on a pedestal. Take take Jeff Bezos for example. He was treated as the next coming of Christ, or if you ask Reddit, the Antichrist. The success of Amazon was sold as an AD chess move, but in reality, it was a kind of slow, boring rise of a dude who founded an online bookstore, cheated on his wife, and started taking steroids. Now, I'm not going to say that Amazon took no skill, but the point is that everyone saw this as an amazing thing, an amazing company, and that anyone who was working for them at the time was the chosen one. Don't believe me? The same thing happened to Larry and Sergey. People treated them like tech messiahs, and honestly, I'm actually shocked that Larry hasn't caught any Antichrist accusations yet, because look at that smile. If we're looking at the facts of what Google actually was, it's an experimental research program that spun off into a startup and overtook Yahoo while they were fumbling the biggest bag in history. Google's come up was pretty much spotless, but just don't ask what Larry and Sergey got up to when they were alone together. You might be wondering what the company's success has to do with this, and if I can just get on with explaining the title of the video. To that I would say, we're only a couple of minutes in, and this isn't TikTok. The reason the companies are important is because they're the ones hiring the devs, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about now. Hiring. This is the most important part. Since the companies I have mentioned all came up within the same decade, there was a sprint to scale the internet. For this, FAANG needed devs, and a lot of them. Some say that Jeff traded one hair follicle for one dev, and look at his head now. Between the years of 2012 and 2018, this is where these companies had to find a great way to hire people. But since they were about the same size as OpenAI's power bill, they needed an easy way to rank devs and interview them quickly. What did they come up with? Yep, that's right. LeetCode. Since right now you're probably having shudders, or maybe just getting up having fainted, let me assure you of one thing. It's only gonna get worse. The second LeetCode came out to help FAANG companies was the same second getting hired became about rigging systems instead of getting there based on merit. And this is where the fraud begins. When LeetCode dropped in 2012, it quickly picked up 3 million registered users, which is the same amount of people who think you need to clean your room. It was absolutely clear that this was the future. Almost as quickly as LeetCode sprouted up, so did a book called Cracking the Code Interview, which managed to sell 500,000 copies in just a year. The interview prep industry was in full force. Hundreds of interview bootcamps started popping up, charging between $700 and $10,000. And on everyone's least favorite site, LinkedIn, in 2015, FAANG Interview Prep gained more annual posts than Software Portfolio. The numbers are truly staggering. Even a survey stated that 99% of employed FAANG engineers would fail their own interviews without weeks of refresher prep, which means either tools like LeetCode are really good, or there's a problem with how interviews actually work. And in my opinion, the issue is the latter. Major companies started running what they called hiring hiring loops. Sounds cool, right? Well, the only cool thing about it is the name. The content is basically just an algorithmic torture chamber that, in my opinion, should violate human rights. And I'm only half joking there. You'd go through back-to-back technical interviews using leak code-based questions, each one designed to make you question every career choice you've ever made. Most people didn't even make it past question 2. Now, for all this suffering, you would think that these companies made sure that at the very least, leak code actually predicted actual job success, right? Wrong. There is actually no credible evidence that leak code increases your ability to do your job at these FAANG companies, which makes it about as useful as watching Fireship videos. To make things worse, since it is a test, people would focus on revising and cramming information into their head a day before the exam, instead of actually knowing what is needed to complete the job, which is probably why AWS once knocked out the internet because one guy typed the wrong subcommand. Now, what we have spoken about is a huge part of what makes FAANG Devs fraud, but it's not the full picture yet. So far we have gone over how getting an interview is purely based on show, we have proved this with LinkedIn and the code stats, and we have also proven that once you actually get the interview, that it's almost always not based on merits, and it's basically all just based on what you can remember from the previous day's study session. But what if I told you the scam goes one step further? Once you get a job at FAANG, these companies have developed calibration cycles, which is basically a register of all the developers. Fortunately for developers, they're quite used to being put on a register, so this isn't such a big deal. This register is built to monitor the bottom percent of performers, and this is where yet another buzzword enters the frame. To get off this Orwellian register, you must complete something called a performance exit ramp, which is them basically saying, we're going to fire you, so you better get your act together, bucko. At Amazon, for example, their focus program tracked every ticket until HR had enough paperwork to justify cutting you loose. Now, this brings us to why this part of the scam proves that FAANG devs are not as they seem. What was found was engineers spent 20 to 40% of their working hours on self-promotion and metric selection instead of shipping code, basically just trying to rig the algorithm. This caused teams to avoid anything risky, complex, or long-term, which is probably why Google's I'm feeling lucky button loses them $110 million a year. Now, we have gone through everything from pre-interview to interview and post-interview. You now understand the scam, but now you need to understand how the scam has spread and how it currently affects your life. During 2020, everything including everyone's dopamine receptors started getting fried. Since so many people were at home using the internet, cloud services skyrocketed. FAANG thought these changes were going to be permanent, so they decided to hire more people than OpenAI has lawsuits. Amazon's workforce doubled, with 106% growth from 2019 to 2022. Meta grew 103%, the Bay Area added 74,000 tech jobs, and zero interest rates made the whole hiring spree feel rational. But like normal, everything big tech did was wrong. 2020 hit, and reality returned. Interest rates rose, demand normalized, and layoffs began. Over 150,000 FAANG devs were cut in 2024, and another 72,000 by mid-2025. Amazon even put thousands on their performance exit ramp before announcing 27,000 layoffs, using the ramp as legal cover for the mass firings. And why was all this? In my humble opinion, because people hired far too many people, and the people they did hire were completely ass. And here is the proof. October 2025, AWS, 14 hours offline, 17 million user reports, 3.5 companies shut down, root cause, engineer mistake. October 2021, Facebook, 6 hours down, 3.5 billion users locked out, root cause, engineer mistake. 2021, Google Cloud, 4 hours down. YouTube, Gmail, and Google Drive, all down. Root cause, engineer mistake. Yep. I don't think I need to carry on, you get the issue. Everything was caused by subpar engineers, and in my opinion, is due to bad hiring and monitoring techniques. But what does this mean for you? If you are a dev, and you actually want to get a payday, I think the only thing you can do is play the system. Use leak code, use LinkedIn, do everything you can to boost your image, because right now, big tech does not care about your actual skill, and that's the dark truth. And that's why FAANG devs are frauds.